Hey, what's going on, Mission Hills Church? We're so excited to have you back with your two hosts on the Continuing the Conversation feed here on the Messages podcast. You're back with Colin and
Craig. Where have you been?
I was in Banff last week, actually. I think, who was it that filled in? Boyer filled in for me last week?
Did a great job.
Who's awesome. He is always like one of my first go-tos where I'm like, if I can't go in, we should at least take it up a notch and get Boyer in here. So,
he did a really good job, but I missed you. But Banff,
I missed you too, Craig.
Banff is a good place to be.
I had never been before, so I got a buddy who's getting married in September, so we went for a bachelor party, and I'm at this cool place in life where I have a lot of friends that aren't Christians, which is really kind of an honor, and it's really cool where they haven't ostracized me or they don't think I'm too weird. But when you're early, a lot of these bachelor parties consist of a lot of like, you're gonna go have some drinks and like that's all we want to do and stuff. But a lot of these buddies are from Colorado, and they're like, let's get into the woods. Let's go whitewater rafting for a weekend. I was like, that sounds perfect.
That sounds like a Colin thing.
Yeah, so we whitewater rafted, we hiked, we climbed, got lost in the woods for a couple days. It was like, and I've never been to Banff. As somebody who's from Estes Park, Colorado, like Banff is kind of a sister city almost, is how I'd always thought about it, kind of in the Canadian Rockies.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's a little entryway into the national park, both of us. And I might be botching these statistics here, but it gave me a good overhead view of how I grew up. So Banff processes, they said, about 5 to 6 million tourists a year going through. And Estes Park does somewhere between, I think I read 12 to 14 million going in a year. So I was like, wow, I always knew Estes was busy, but I didn't know it was that busy. So it was a good time.
Yeah, it's really high. Well, cool. Good.
Well, how was it preparing a message of this magnitude this week, Craig? I mean, for those of you that are just tuning in with us that haven't done this before, Craig did not just write the message this week. We've been preparing for a long time, but usually we sit down on a Tuesday, you run it through a bunch of people and get some feedback on it. And mostly I want to touch into how the feedback session went this week.
Yeah, actually, I was people saw that on the schedule. I had a placeholder topic, sexual purity.
Yep.
And so like worship leaders were like, do you have any songs? Because I cannot think of like don't worry about songs. Yeah. We don't need that. Feedback was helpful. Yeah. Feedback's always helpful. That's the secret sauce, I think, to good message is get the bad stuff out of the way first and have people that will tell you that don't say that, or like don't spend so much time there, but you could spend more time here. Yeah, so feedback was really good. Glad it wasn't family weekend. Sometimes I've accidentally made just sensitive messages that have just landed on family weekend. I never do it on purpose, but sometimes it's kind of played out. So I was glad it wasn't family weekend. Feedback was good. Nothing particular. I had spent a lot of time on this one before I got even to the feedback, so I don't think there was a lot of stuff that they were like, oh, don't do that or don't talk about that. So
I would imagine sexual purity kind of falls into almost a topic of kind of like money, where it is mentioned in the Bible. It is something very important to our faith, but as soon as you bring it up, you can kind of feel people do a little bit of this in the seats.
Oh, I felt it in the room.
Yeah.
As soon as they sort of realized that's where we were going, like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, one of the things I got in the feedback section that I think I leaned into in the message was the shift that you have in the text from sex to selfishness. Mm-hmm. There's some sense in which like, oh, I'm relieved we're kind of off the sex, but also, oh, wait a minute, this just got really personal because I was good on the sex thing because I'm not doing that, right? Mm-hmm. That version of it. But the selfishness, well, if you're going to go there, like, that is me. So it was this kind of interesting, and I felt that even in the room. It was like, okay, sex, that's uncomfortable. Oh, selfishness, all right, I'm relaxing. Oh, wait a minute, I'm selfish. I'm getting tense again. There was a very interesting dynamic even in the rooms this weekend on that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, kind of one of the things I wanted to kick off with here is when you're preparing for a topic, I would imagine this is a little bit of a loaded question, but when you're preparing, how hard is it to go from topic A into topic B? You knew you had to touch on two different things this week, or you're just going to prepare for topic A. I would imagine it's for somebody who does a lot of preaching, a lot of public speaking, maybe it's kind of fun to shift from A to B. You're like, okay, I got to create something new this week. Figuring out those transitions is kind of fun, or do you feel like that's a lot of work?
Well, sometimes it is a lot of work. This one was interesting because I didn't really have any choice.
Sure.
Like,
honestly, it's in the text.
It's in the text. The shift from sex to selfishness is in the text. But more importantly, the links between them are actually really tight. So had I broken the passage after the sex thing, I actually would have ended up having to honestly bring some stuff in that's not in the text, and probably would have taken a direction that wasn't intended. Because, I mean, I could have gone to some other passages to talk about sexual purity, that kind of a thing, but the connection, the swing from sexuality to selfishness is a really central part of what he's doing there. And so if I'd broken the passage before the selfishness, I would have broken it artificially. And so one of the things you try to do, I mean, I'm an expository teacher by nature, by training, but also by heart. And that doesn't necessarily mean you only go all the way through the Bible. I think we've talked about this before, or through a whole book of the Bible. But it does mean that your outline for your message is a passage, right? And so part of the art of that is art and science is figuring out where does the passage end or begin and where does it end. And for the most part, I need to do the whole thing, or what I'm actually doing is I'm doing some damage to the Word of God, right? Because like Paul, yes, sexual immorality, shift into selfishness. If I hadn't done that shift in this message, I would have left a lot of people with the impression that it was just about sexual immorality. And then next week, if I did the selfishness part, the tie wouldn't have been there mentally, and even emotionally, people wouldn't have felt these things are actually really closely linked. And so in this case, it was pretty easy because that's what the text does. And there's some very clear markers. This is where this passage starts and this is where it ends. I need to do the whole thing or I'm going to end up doing some damage to the big idea, the big thought, what's going on there.
I was interested in one of the questions I wanted to ask you too. I kind of think about this with when you hear stories and testimonials about like really bad addictions that people have come back from. My wife and I were talking about this a little bit where he starts with the sexual immorality, and it's this really big topic to tackle, very important in the faith and everything, but it's not a catch-all for everybody. With the swing into selfishness, do you think this is a way for it to be like, yes, this is important to address this, but like the tie into this thing is like a wider net to like catch more not catch more people, but to like address the wider population, because we're all victims of this, the selfishness aspect of it, at least.
Yeah.
It felt like a way of kind of like moving from a heavy, deep topic into, and then like saying, well, you're not all off the hook here. Like, let's address the wider piece that this kind of runs into.
Yeah, it is, because and like we said in the message, I really do think that sexual immorality is a manifestation of underlying selfishness. And so, it's, maybe a few people have done this, and scholars debate, what exactly was going on, because he doesn't get really specific or explicit in the text about what was going on there. It's not like in Corinth we know that there was a man who had his mother-in-law, and like, okay, that's very specific stuff. We don't get that kind of thing in Thessalonians. So we don't know exactly what the sexual immorality was, but the fact that he moves the needle a little bit from sex to selfishness, I do think is his way of going, don't look at those people and go, oh, you're so much worse than I am.
Right.
Because the real issue is this, and I do think this is something, and he's actually setting up a theme that I think is going to kind of continue throughout the next couple of sections. When the specific issues he deals with, you could make the argument that all of them are ultimately served by having established that selfishness is an issue. We're called to be something else. We're called to serve, not try to get from, right? Not to seize, but to serve. And then that plays out in the way he's going to talk about like being busy and not a busybody. Like, keep your hands busy so you don't end up getting, like involved in other people's business, and that you're not causing division and dissension because you're looking like you're not doing anything, so you're desperate for some kind of stimulation almost, right? So you invent some drama and some divisiveness. But if you were thinking about serving others, that wouldn't happen. So I do think the selfishness is kind of setting up in some ways, not just the sexuality, but these other issues we're going to deal with over the next few weeks.
It's so funny. I mean, God obviously knew what was coming down the pike, but how apt is that keeping your hands busy, or else you need that stimulation? How much more does that, maybe not more apply today, but boy, is that prevalent today. Who little did he know when he was preaching this and writing this in the Bible, what that was going to look like down the road. Yeah,
so we should chase that rabbit for a little bit, because I think there's something really interesting that's going on. We touched on this a little bit in the message, that our culture's view of sex is not unusual. It's unhealthy, it's immoral, but it's not unusual. Same kinds of things were going on in ancient Rome. What's interesting is that I think the reason that you were beginning to get that kind of stuff in ancient Rome was idleness. because it was one of the first time, well, I don't know if it's first time, that's a bigger history question than I'm able to speak to, but I can tell you in the history of Rome, you had a lot of people who were living in the cities at this point. They weren't on the field, they weren't out in the fields, they weren't farming, they weren't merchants. There was an upper class, and even if you weren't upper class, a lot of times like you could go to the market and buy what you needed, which means you didn't have to make it. So suddenly you had some free time. And it's interesting that the rise in sexual immorality that we see addressed in a variety of places in the New Testament was almost always in larger cities where idleness was a new part of society and hadn't been 100 years before this, right? So in Romans 1, there's this line of kind of dissent, and sexuality is a big piece of it. But I think it's interesting that was Rome. And in Rome, you suddenly had a class of people who were like, what do we do? I'm bored. And my grandma used to say, idle hands are the devil's workshop.
Yep.
I think there's some truth to that. And so the idleness gave rise to sexual immorality. And so today, why would we be surprised? Like we've moved in, like, I mean, who grows food anymore, right? I mean, you got a couple people that it's a nice little hobby on the side, but
living off of it is something else entirely.
Yeah, we're idle. We have a level of idleness that the world has never known. So, yeah, I like just reading history. I'd go, even if I didn't know what I knew, I could predict we're gonna get a lot of sexual immorality because we live in a culture where it's possible. We get time. We're bored.
And back and to that point, you had talked about how they weren't very specific on the immorality, and I think that's
not in Thessalonians.
Yeah, and that's. I wonder if it's in relation to the idleness. That is just a pure reflection of, hey, I've told you what God has in plan for this section of your life here. So like anything outside of it, this is kind of our catch-all statement here, is going to fall into that immorality category here. So like we're going to give you the definition of what the thing is, and then like. It's what is it, a circle? The definition of a circle is anything that's not a non-circle, or however I've botched that. But I feel like that's kind of the definition we're getting here. You know,
this is where sex is intended to be experienced and enjoyed. I don't need to list all the things to tell you.
Because that would be, I mean, you go ad nauseum for that.
I mean, and there are places where like Paul or one of the writers will address a specific one, but yeah, I mean that's why I felt it's always interesting. You know, some people will be upset that I said what I said. And some people are upset that I didn't say a lot more than that. And I'm like, here's the parameter. I mean, here's what the Bible. I mean, I'm doing systematic theology when I said that. You know, the statement is, God, it created sex to be experienced and enjoyed in a lifelong committed marriage between a man or a woman. I'm not going out to get anybody on that one. It is interesting how often we have our set of things like, oh, that definition really gets them, and we ignore that it gets us in other areas, right? So, like, I mean, just putting it bluntly, people will often go, oh, yeah, homosexual, you're going after the homosexual thing. No, actually, there's a lot of premarital sexual immorality, right? And especially since if Jesus is to be taken at his face value, lusting after somebody is committing adultery with them, then pornography, inside marriage, right? It's all, that's all dealt with by that definition. So it's always interesting how people are like, oh, yeah, you're really going after, I'm really not. I'm going after purity. I'm going after morality, and this is morality. I don't need to deal with every possible exception if we can deal. It's the whole, you know, if I know what a counterfeit, or if I know what the real thing feels like, I can identify the counterfeits really fast, versus if you're going to try to teach me how to feel every counterfeit and identify it, we're never going to get there. Yeah. So let's deal with the real thing, and that's what I was trying to do there.
I wonder if that helps. This is another rabbit to chase here. I wonder if that helps with the spread of a new religion too, because then you've got your hard and fast definition for something. You've got these new believers that are coming up, and they're like, I have questions. I was living this way. He was living this way. Like, how does that play into this? And like, here's your hard and fast definition on this. So that like takes care of all of these questions that are kind of coming up. I wonder if that would be helpful for, especially for a centralized population like Rome at the time, where you're going to have far-reaching aspects of this message getting carried through, where it's like, hey, your definition is A, B, and C. Anything, all the letters D through Z are on the outside of it. So that way people are like, oh, well, I don't have to worry about that then because I've got the thing.
That's a really interesting thought. I haven't thought about it like that, but I mean, yeah, let's chase the rabbit for a second. So it is interesting how few rules and regulations and descriptions and definitions you get from Jesus, right? So, I mean, at one level, and again, I'm just thinking out loud, so this is going to get recorded and people will play it in perpetuity, so I hope I'm not really far off. But
hopefully they only write in nice comments.
Or hopefully I'm just afraid that I'm going to screw this up because I'm thinking about it out loud, and as an introvert, I don't usually do that. I've already processed.
I can draw it out of you. This is great.
There's a sense in which, like, the essence of Christianity is there's one God, and he loves you. You haven't loved him back. Mm-hmm. But because he loves you, he sent Jesus. And so any religion that doesn't start in God's love and express itself in a love of others, that's not Christianity. Now, there's your real thing. Mm-hmm. Now, I can start to go, counterfeit over here because you're saying I have to also do X, Y, and Z. Well, no, is that part of the definition?
Right.
God loves you, and loving others. Oh, okay, that doesn't fit. And but we're going to split hairs on doctrine over here. Jesus didn't say by your doctrine, everybody. It's not to say none of those things matter, but that understanding of the gospel and of Christianity does allow you to identify something other than Christianity pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, it lets you get your teeth into it pretty quickly for something that's like starting to catch fire a little bit.
Absolutely.
I was thinking about that, especially kind of in an ancient society where, not a lot of stuff's getting, typed out in an email and popped off in Microsoft Teams. So you would need something easy and transportable message-wise.
Yep.
So I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, God loves me, so I'm supposed to love others. The theologian in me is like, that's too simplistic. But for God so loved the world, right? And we've gravitated to John 3:16 because it somehow feels, we just intuitively recognize it as, that's kind of the heart of the whole thing. And then Jesus said, by this everyone will know my followers, if you love one another. So there does seem, God loves us, so we're supposed to love others. And obviously there's more to it than that, but right. That's a pretty good rule. If it doesn't look like love, it's probably not the gospel.
Probably from elsewhere.
Yeah. I have to think about that a little bit.
I thought that was good. I want to talk to you a little about your transition going from just in the message, selfishness and kind of sexuality. How was your heart with that? I'm sure you felt good about the message, but you said you felt it in the room a little bit. Were you a little nervous transferring into the subject there on Saturday night, the first time you did it? You're like, how are we going to react here?
No, I don't think I was particularly nervous about it. One of the things I think it was 2 weeks ago we talked about, which is that what you expect you can endure.
Yes.
I expected criticism from this message because I know we have a great mix of people, and I love the fact that we're reaching people that are, they've got long-standing church backgrounds, and then we've got people that are brand new. Like my favorite comments are from people that, like, when they come up to me in the lobby, they say something that's clearly designed to be encouraging, but it's like it immediately reveals, oh, you're not used to church. Like, you're new here, right? Like, I had a guy tell me once, that was a hell of a talk, dude. Like, that's my all-time favorite.
You need that framed
piece of feedback.
That's great.
Like, I love the fact that we have all those. And when you're going to be reaching people like that, you're going to have people who, what I said about God's intention for sex sounds really narrow, and it seems... It can feel judgmental. It's certainly not my heart on it, but it can feel that way. And so I expect criticism around some of those kinds of things from people that aren't there yet. I don't enjoy it. I can't lie and say I'm so thick-skinned that it doesn't matter to me at all, because it does. But I also know if I expect it, I can endure it. And so I went in knowing I was going to get some of that. I had a fair amount of feedback from people going, oh, I'm so glad you tackled that. And they were kind and gracious in that. That's fine. Because it is so important, and are afraid that the church doesn't deal with it enough. And I don't know that I think we don't deal with it enough. I'll deal with it whenever it comes up in the text. But no, I don't know that I was nervous about it. It's interesting. In the moment to go, oh, I can feel the room change a little bit.
Yeah.
And we were kind of having some fun up to that point, and then we hit that, and everybody's like, ooh. Like, everybody just gets still.
Yeah.
Real still. And then I could feel people get less still when we started moving into the selfishness. And then when we really began to realize, oh, that's something we all deal with, people got still again. That's just an interesting thing. But it wasn't so much nervousness as just, I don't know, somehow almost an outside observer observing the whole situation. Yeah. There's definitely some things you can notice that are interesting.
As a 7, I like to, and being on the communications team, I see all of the form submissions that come in and everything, which is kind of cool, and you get to redirect it to, whom they may concern. And I always think I grew up in a church of 200 people, like 8 people on staff, real small. And I think it's so cool that oftentimes people feel comfortable enough in a large church setting that they want to hopefully provide positive feedback, or they ask questions. They want to get connected to people, and they're treating it as a smaller church. Because oftentimes big church, people go get your seat in the back,
Sure.
last song plays, you're out the door. So it's probably cool as a pastor to be up front, and even when you feel the room shift, you feel the room shift. So you're like, everyone's engaged. This is a cool God thing that's happening right now, where like they're locked into hearing the word. So that's got to be really cool.
It is, yeah. And I'm kind of with you. I really enjoy it, even in a large church context, when they have questions. And I'll just be perfectly real with you and up front, since this is the Continuing the Conversation podcast, and I'll tell you, like, I have told my assistant, if people are just mad at me because I said what God says, I don't really need to see that.
No, because that's not helping anybody.
And I'm insecure enough that I know that, like, that's just going to live rent-free in my brain. And yet, like, could I have done it differently? I don't think so. I mean, I feel like I was about as loving as I could be, but I also had to speak the truth, and I'm like 99.999% sure that what I said about God's intention for sexuality, that's just what the Bible says. So I don't even need to see the notes that are just like, I can't believe you said that. How hateful of you. I mean, those come in, and I've seen them in the past. This time I was like, I don't need to deal with them. But I told her, if anybody has a legitimate question, or if they're like, I'm struggling with something, 100%, like, get that through to me, set up a time, let's meet, let's get them, I'm very happy to engage in that. Even if you're like, I'm struggling with what you said, cool, let's have a conversation. It's you're just wrong. Well, I don't think I am, because I think it's what God says, but anybody else, I actually love that I get to have those conversations. Actually, this is totally off the subject, but it's interesting. I had a really interesting conversation this morning with a member of our Littleton campus that basically, from a couple months ago, I had talked about the importance of having grace. And what this person wanted to talk about was, how do I have grace on a group of people who have just done incredible harm to my family for generations, coming out of some stuff in the Middle East. And as a Christian family, part of a Christian group of individuals in some of the Middle East, had experienced like really severe persecution, like family members burned over half their body, killed, sexual assault, all kinds of things, and in the name of religion kind of stuff. And this person was kind of going, I don't think I'm bitter. I think there's forgiveness. But when I encounter people that not just that's their background, but like that's their faith, and that it's right out front for them, I don't want to do business with them. I don't want to put myself in a position where I could be taken advantage of in the way that we have before. But I'm called to have grace, right? How do I deal with that? Like, that was a really deep conversation.
Yeah.
And it was a painful privilege to be invited into those conversations. And so I love the fact that when these kinds of issues come up that really are hard things, that people feel like, I can reach out, and I'm always happy to have those conversations or to connect them with somebody. It is kind of cool that for whatever reason people feel like, we can still connect and have the conversation even though it's a big church. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'll plug it right now. We'll put it in the show notes, but if you go to missionhills.org/prayer, it'll take you to our care and prayer page. And it's not just Craig, it's not just myself that see these prayers. These get sent out every week by our entire care team to the entire staff. So if you submit any prayer to Mission Hills Church, it'll come through as anonymous if that's what you wish, name if you wish. But you've got, what are we up to? Maybe 110-ish with elders and interns and MDPs and part-time now. So you've got over 100 people praying for you week in and week out for those types of situations. So highly, highly encourage you guys not only to write in with questions, and a whole serve team. Well. Yes. But, dedicated people here on both a serve team basis and a, vocational ministry basis that'll be praying for you guys. So we'd love to hear that too.
Absolutely.
Craig, you want to give us a little preview on what we can expect in this coming week here? I always like the continuing conversation is the peeling back of the curtain. So I always like to give people not only a insight into how intentional you are with crafting your messages, just because to those people that are maybe writing in me and stuff like, how could you say it? Like, Craig goes off for, you're in Oregon for about a week, usually when you do your planning thing. And then we write stuff months out. We plan series months out. We're a year in advance with a lot of like what we're looking at here stuff too. So this is not drop of the hat, jerk knee decision making on that. So I want to encourage people there. But can you give us a little preview of next week?
Yeah, so this next week there is, well, as I said, we're kind of continuing, I think, on this issue that's ultimately rooted in, like, we're supposed to serve. And so there's some commands, and there's kind of 3 commands that will center everything around because they're in the text. It's basically like, chill out, and which I think is about, like, find some contentment, okay? So be chill, be content, be still. The text says be quiet, but it's a deep word. That word has some deep waters to it.
Okay.
Like, what does it mean to be quiet? It's actually related to the he leads me beside quiet waters in Psalm 23. That's the same Greek word that translates that Hebrew term in there. So there's a sense of I mean, it's not just like I'm serene, but like I'm content. There's some peace to it. And so stay calm, and then there's like don't be getting involved in things that you shouldn't be involved in. Don't be divisive. Okay, there's a pursuing unity, and then there's this kind of overarching command of, like, be busy. Like, actually work with your hands and be busy enough that you're not worried about this and you're not worried about that and that kind of. So there's a weird contrast that I'm kind of working through in the message. Like, be still, but be busy.
Ooh, okay.
Ooh, okay. So this is not a problem we solve. It's a tension we manage. How do we do that?
One of my favorite phrases that you've coined.
Thanks.
Right? Because
I wish we didn't have to do it as much, but I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, it's good. It's good. As you always say, there's no balance in life. There's just seasons and rhythms. So I think that's always a good reminder to that as well, where, not only in seasons, you're in moments that require that management of tension. So I think that's always a good.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the essence of the message this week. How do we manage this tension between be still, but be busy? Yeah.
That's perfect, man. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me today. Thanks for joining us, you guys. If you have any questions,
everybody,
email us at info@missionhills.org as always. And if you, we'll link it in the show notes as well. But if you'd like for us to pray for you guys, or if you want to connect somebody, missionhills.org/prayer, we'll link it down there. And we're excited to see you guys next week.
That was great. God bless.
This podcast is hosted by Colin McFarland along with Craig Smith. We are mixed, edited, and produced by Zach Anderson. Our creative director is Colin McFarland. Maddie Brower is our SEO and copy specialist. The Continuing the Conversation feed is part of the Mission Hills Podcast Network in Littleton, Colorado, and available for download wherever you get your audio and video podcasts. Thanks for listening.